If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. The Nord Stream pipeline's blown up and leaking tons of methane into the atmosphere. The U.S. calling this a deliberate act of sabotage, while NATO threatens to retaliate. Our next guest wrote the book on Putin's playbook and says all signs point to Russia for this dangerous attack. Here to explain is Russian-born former U.S. Defense Intelligence Officer Rebecca Koffler. We've been debating this, Rebecca, all day yesterday on the show. Look, you wrote the book on Putin's playbook. You say that the U.S. government is correct, that this was Putin. I'm a little bit doubtful just because our government has lied. They said that Hunter Biden's laptop was disinformation. The same player started the Russia hoax. So I'm always skeptical. But let's hear what you say.
Of course, I understand, Rachel, that U.S. government cannot be fully trusted these days 100%. But on this one, I actually have written an op-ed on the Fox News digital website where I outline 5 top reasons why Russia is most likely behind this. I'm 99% certain of it. Here's why. Russia has the motivation. It has the doctrine that it developed specifically for this situation. It has the capability, one of the few countries, to do it covertly. It has demonstrated intent that I described in my book on page 14. And finally, Nord Stream pipeline was no longer a revenue-producing capability for them because Nord Stream 2 never became operational because Germany refused to certify it as punishment for Putin for waging war on Ukraine. And Nord Stream 1, the Russians shut down in August because they claimed that sanctions prevented them from repairing the pipeline. So they had no use of it in the short term, and it presented an opportunity for them to conduct industrial sabotage just like they planned.
So let me just push back just for a second here. So they could, if assuming that in the long term these pipelines were working, they could turn the pipelines on or off. This is Russian-owned infrastructure. They're hurting their own country, their own companies that are invested in this.
Well, here's my response to this one. Russia has decided that it will be under sanctions indefinitely because Putin will not stop waging war on Ukraine. The outcome of the situation in Ukraine is an existential issue for them because it's part of the strategic security perimeter on which Russia relied for centuries. And that is why Putin decided that NATO membership for Ukraine is a red line. But the revenue that the Russians have lost has already been replaced by the $55 billion joint Russia-China pipeline, the Power of Siberia, and additional export earnings from non-Western countries such as, not just China, but India, Afghanistan, including the Taliban, the Russians are making deals with. So, and Russian Nord Stream part is only 51%. The rest of it is European countries.
Well, you make a good case. I'm still not convinced, but I'm willing to consider that for sure, Rebecca. You definitely are a great source of information and a reliable one. We'll have to get you back to talk about it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Love having you on the show.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Who done it? Who stole my baby?
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that Exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Thanks, Jake. In his speech this morning, the president called the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, quote, a deliberate act of sabotage. And he said now the Russians are pumping out misinformation and lies about it. Should we take that to mean that the U.S. now believes that Russia was likely responsible for this act of sabotage?
Well, first, Russia has done what it frequently does when it is responsible for something, which is make accusations that it was really someone else who did it. We've seen this repeatedly over time. But the president was also clear today that there is more work to do on the investigation before the United States government is prepared to make an attribution in this case. One of the practical reasons for that is that because gas is emanating from these pipelines, the Danish authorities and other authorities in the Baltic Sea can't actually get down to the source of the leak to do forensics on what appears to be an explosion. So we will have to wait until a combination of physical inspection, intelligence gathering, and consultation with our allies to make a definitive determination. But what we can say unequivocally is the suggestions Russia has made about the United States and other countries are flat out false. Russia knows they're false, but of course this is part of their playbook.
But how many countries or entities are even capable of carrying out the kind of attack that we saw with hundreds of kilograms of explosives 250 feet below the surface of the sea?
Not many, and I think this is obviously an act of sabotage that took place, we believe, in the neighborhood of 70 to 80 meters, 230 to 270 feet under the ocean. That takes some degree of sophistication. But I don't want to get ahead of myself in terms of asserting how exactly this happened or who exactly did it until we're standing on solid ground. We will continue to work with our allies and partners to gather all of the facts, and then we will make a determination about where we go from there.
Who done it? Who stole my baby?
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that? Exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
We still don't know who or what caused damage to the natural gas pipelines that connect Russia to the rest of Europe. Several leaks were discovered in both the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines earlier this week. They have since been spewing methane into the Baltic Sea, prompting concerns over a potential climate disaster. President Biden said Friday he believes the damage is an act of sabotage by the Russians.
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies. We're going to work with our allies to get to the bottom of exactly precisely what happened.
For more on this, let's bring in CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and Face the Nation moderator, Margaret Brennan. Margaret, let's start with your new reporting about the gas leaks. What have you learned about the cause?
Well, President Biden says there's an offer by the U.S. to investigate, including sending down divers so that they can actually build evidence to bring the case forward. But at this point, the assessment is that Russia was behind it. And there's a few schools of thought here. Why would Russia bomb its own pipeline or sabotage its own pipeline? It doesn't seem to make sense if you're thinking in a rational actor scenario. But there are a few thoughts here. One of them is that this could be strategic misdirection. One of them is that it could be a warning of further attacks to come on infrastructure, including that of the West. Today, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, said the West has to be ready for more attacks on infrastructure. But thirdly, and I've had U.S. officials raise this to me, there is the thought that this could be the Kremlin basically trying to limit its financial losses. Russia was under contract to deliver gas, I should say, to parts of Europe. And by cutting off that supply, it was not delivering on the contracts it had. So it was facing potential losses here of anywhere between $10 to $30 billion. If they can declare force majeure, basically say we couldn't deliver if we tried because the pipeline isn't functioning, it may help to get out of that. So that's one of the likely scenarios in the view of some U.S. officials that is being considered right now.
And Margaret, on the hurricane, you have FEMA Administrator Criswell and Florida Senator Rick Scott joining the show this Sunday. What are you hoping to learn from those guests?
Well, we will want to get the latest, of course, on the ground in Florida, in South Carolina, and the other areas where FEMA is warning there could be flooding. That is one of their greatest concerns when it comes to loss of life. We want to talk about a number of things, including that tough question, Catherine, of whether some of these areas should be rebuilt, because that is something that our own Ben Tracy has been reported on, that strategic retreat from some areas as they look at more frequent and stronger storm systems. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis called this a once-in-a-500-year level of flooding. So we want to talk about that as we look at federal monies being dedicated to rebuilding. Is that how this money should be spent? We will also talk to Florida's current senator, former governor Rick Scott, for his view on what is to come.
Margaret Brennan, thank you.
Thank you.
And a quick programming note, you can watch Face the Nation right here on CBS News. It streams at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern every Sunday.
Who done it? Who stole my baby?
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Who done it? Who stole my